Hello all and welcome back to another wonderful video. Today we're going to be talking about something that I've wanted to talk about for quite some time. Now that is some Ponytown OC making tips. Now these tips are something that can help you outside of Ponytown, maybe minus a couple of things here and there. You might want to tweak some things here and there, but for the most part some of these tips can be used outside of Ponytown whenever you're trying to make an OC for either a book or a comic or something else altogether. You can use these tips in other areas besides Ponytown, but we're going to kind of focus on Ponytown because that's kind of the theme of the channel and everything like that. So the reason I'm doing this video is because I get a lot of requests and lots of questions and stuff like that. Can you help me make a Ponytown OC? Can you help me with this? Tips and stuff like that. Can you give me tips for, making my next OC, that sort of thing? Well, today, here it is. Here's 5 things that I think can help you making that next OC. So starting off with number 1, don't ignore any of the parts in Ponytown. Just don't ignore any of the parts. There's all kinds of horns and beards and hats and other accessories and stuff like that, like flowers, piercings, stuff like that, that you would probably normally just ignore because, oh, you don't like piercings, or oh, you don't like these hats, or whatever. But ignoring these actually kind of limit your creativity even further. Ponytown's customization is very, very expansive. It's very big. There's a lot you can do with the customization, but it's still limited. And if you try to, cut down on that limitation even further by just straight up ignoring stuff like beards, horns, antlers, hats, different stuff like that, then you're going to be limiting yourself even further than what you need to be doing. There is a lot of very interesting and creative things that you can do if you recolor some of these things, like the hats, the beards, and stuff like that. And if you recolor them, allow outlines, allow custom outlines, don't darken outlines, do different things like that, and try to play around with some things like the beards and the hats, then you're probably going to find yourself with something a little bit interesting and very, very unique looking. For example, if you've ever seen a monster in Ponytown, one of those weird creatures with giant mouths and everything like that, or a weird creature with a giant tongue, or a weird creature with a giant eye or something like that, or a giraffe. I've actually seen a giraffe. That like blew my mind when I saw that. But anyway, these people were able to create these things like the giant mouth and the eyes and everything like that because they were looking at some of the parts that people weren't normally using, and they're finding unique ways to recolor them, to basically repurpose them. It's no longer a beard, it's now a mouth, or it's no longer a hat, it's now an eye, that sort of thing. So moving on to number 2, always remember the color codes. Just remember the color codes. When you're making these OCs, it's very easy to try and just oh, this is green, so you just move your little thing over and try and match that same green. If you just copy that text, if you just copy that little color code number and just move it over to something else, then you're good. You're not going to have to worry about remembering it or anything like that, because you can just copy and paste it, or you can just remember them, write it down separately, and then just write it in every single one. This will allow you to make the entire OC overall very consistent, and it will also help you to fade into brighter or darker colors if you're trying to do something like a gradient. If you're trying to make it to where the arm goes from white to a blue and then a slightly darker blue and so on and so on, then you can do that if you know your color codes. If you know what blue you're trying to get to at the end, and if you know what blue you want to start with, then it's very easy to kind of switch between them and everything like that. This can go for things outside of Ponytown, mostly for digital art, but I digress. You can look at these color codes. You can save these colors. If you're using the right software, you're able to save different colors. You can take these colors, you can save them, and just kind of separate them for per OC. Like, oh, I have a Skella over here, I need this green, this green, this green, and this blue, and this blue, and this white, and I'm good. And then if I go over to make birthmark, then I need this purple, this black, this gray, this white, and so on. And you get my point. Remember your color codes, keep track of your color codes, and keep track of your colors overall, because that is going to allow you to keep your OC consistent throughout things. You wouldn't want an OC with one white arm and then one gray arm. That would just look very weird. Unless that's intentional, you really don't want that, because that doesn't really match and it's not going to look right. It's going to look like you just kind of threw it together. So to keep things consistent, keep track of your colors. That is my second tip to you guys. And moving on to tip number 3, think of what character you want. This is probably the most important tip, because this is what you probably would want to start with realistically. And this tip basically is just that. Think of what character you want. Is this OC going to be a villain? Are they going to be the good guy? Are they going to be an artist? What kind of traits do you want to see this character have? Usually you can reflect those things in the design of the character. Now this is one of those things that like definitely transcends just Ponytown. If you're trying to make an artistic character, then maybe throw in some elements to that. Maybe give them like a paintbrush or a pencil or something like that. Have them have something that kind of signifies that yes, this is an artist. You know, maybe they have a very colorful shirt or something like that. Maybe they have messy hair because they work so long or work so hard. Different things like that, different traits that kind of go into it. So if you have a hardworking OC, like I said, then maybe you can give them, you know, messy hair or something like that because they don't have time to, you know, take care of the hair because they're so busy doing this and that. You know, if you're trying to make a villain, then maybe you want to go with more of a confident look, or maybe you want to go for like a sinister look since it's a villain. Are you trying to make a good guy? You know, think about what you look for in a good person and kind of incorporate those traits. Same thing with the villain thing. If you see a villain, or if you want to make a villain and you kind of know what you want to see in a villain, then you can kind of incorporate that in your design and stuff like that. My number one tip for when it comes to making a villain or something like that, don't just throw in red and black. These are obviously more you know, connected to villains and stuff like that, but not all villains are red and black. You can kind of, you know, go off on your own. You can do a very bright and blue OC, and that could be your very evil character. Just look at something like Bill Cipher. Sure, there's technically black in the color, but it's kind of hard to avoid the color black. But something like Bill Cipher is a very bright yellow character, but it is an extremely evil and sinister character. So just kind of avoid reds and blacks unless it's important to the character, or if it just happens to look the best. Just kind of avoid red and black. There's a whole like argument against like red and black OCs and stuff like that. That's just kind of a side tip there though. So that was kind of tip number 3.5, but let's move on to tip number 4. My fourth tip to you guys is to consider starting with a theme. Now this is something else that you can do before you even start writing or making your OC or anything like that. Start with an idea, start with a theme. Is this character going to be in a sci-fi world? Is it going to be in a Western world, a horror world, like a scary world? I can't really say horror that well, but or is it going to be in a fantasy world? What kind of world is it going to be in? What kind of theme is this character going to have to represent because of what, you know, universe is going to be in? So keep that in mind. A theme can tell you or lead you in the direction you should be going with your OCs, and that can help you in a lot of ways. That can help you with what kind of clothes you want the character to have, what colors you're going to use. It can help you with what accessories they're going to have. For example, if you're going to do something sci-fi, then the character probably needs some form of science fiction-y kind of gadget or something like that, and that's kind of an interesting little equipment, gear, accessory thing that you can give them. If it's going to be in a horror movie, or not a horror movie, but like a horror movie or a horror themed story or character or universe or whatever, then maybe you need to throw in some form of scar or blood or something that kind of just screams, hey, this is going to be from a horror thing. Same thing with Western. Maybe do something that represents cowboys or something like that. Maybe do something similar to that. Just go nuts with it. But sticking with the theme, starting with the theme, allows you to kind of go into the next steps. So consider starting with a theme, because what will happen is you will eventually, you know, as you're making your OC and everything like that, you might eventually think, oh, this might look good on it, or hey, this might look good on it, and you eventually turn into something that you never originally intended it to be. Now this can be good in its own way, but if you're trying to stick with a theme, and if you want this to fit into a proper universe that you're trying to create and everything like that, then stick with the theme, because once you start to veer off, you can look at what theme you're trying to do, and you can see that, hey, look, this thing that I'm trying to add doesn't make sense for this theme unless I do this, or if I do that, or something like that. So if there's like an if I do this, then maybe you can kind of squeeze that in there, but otherwise just stick to your theme and just like stick with it, because if you ignore your theme all the way through, you're going to end up with something that either looks like it's just thrown together, or something that just looks like a lot more thought could have been put into it, or something that just doesn't fit or feel right. So finishing things off here, I want to talk about color palettes. Color palettes, color palettes, color palettes. Now I have a friend that before he makes any OC ever, before he makes any kind of OC, he will go to his computer, go to his tablet, whatever, his phone, whatever, and he'll open up a color palette or like a color wheel or something like that, and kind of create a color palette or look at other color palettes online, and then start creating an OC based on those color palettes. This is a great way to start as well. I just realized that most of these kind of are great ways to start, not necessarily things that you can do once you're kind of in there and everything. But that's, I guess that's okay. But anyway, the color palettes is something that allows you to start off, and something that can kind of help you as you go through, because if you're trying to stick with this color palette and you start making the OC and you add a red color or something like that when it doesn't match your color palette, then you're going to be like, yeah, that doesn't look good. You're going to know what colors don't look good before you even start making the OC, or as you're making the OC, you're going to think, what if I added a flower? And then you realize that no flower is going to match your color palette, so you just can't add the flower. This allows you to kind of make the OC a lot easier, because it gives you a guide. And just like the last tip, this gives you a guide of, like, once you're doing this, once you're working on the OC, as long as you stick to your color palette, you're not going to be stuck there for ages trying to make something, even though you already have the blueprints sort of out there for you. So yeah, I guess that's gonna do it for the video. I don't really have any other tips here. I hope that this is enough for you guys to get started and start making some excellent OCs. I do follow these tips. Every once in a while, I will, like, whenever I go down to sit an OC, I haven't made an OC in a while, but once I go to make an OC, I always kind of look at, what kind of theme am I going to go with here? What kind of colors do I want to use? That sort of thing. And these tips have helped me. I don't know how well it's helped others, because I haven't really shared these tips yet, but hopefully they help you, and if they do, please let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and do those wonderful things, because when you do those wonderful things, you get access to wonderful content such as this. But that's not all you get. You also get to become wonderful yourself, and I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.